Hi, welcome to Finding Alpha. I got this book out, Finding Alpha, The Search for Alpha When Risk and Return Break Down. And it's about risk, return, and alpha, primarily in financial markets. I'm Eric Falkenstein. I wrote the book, and I have a PhD in economics, and I worked in the private sector and finance most of my life. The big idea presented in the book is that the general relationship between risk, however defined, and returns is flat. You don't see a risk premium. Theoretically, you should see an increasing linear relationship between measured risk and expected return. And we see that only for the really low end of the risk spectrum in a couple of areas. And indeed, for the really highly risky assets, like out-of-the-money call options or junk bonds, we actually see a negative return premium. And this is puzzling. Academics have known about this problem for a long time. Fama French in '92 documented that beta, the standard measure of risk, when you control for size, is uncorrelated with returns here on the vertical axis. So you get a bunch of dots like this, as opposed to dots that should go out like a big pickle at a 45-degree line. So the standard theory doesn't work. And indeed, it's not just in beta and equities. You find that among leveraged firms, they actually have lower return than non-leveraged firms. Single B versus triple B bonds, there's no return difference. Out-of-the-money options have the lowest return compared to at-the-money options. And the list goes on and on. All these intuitively risky assets have either flat or lower returns than the less risky benchmark in that asset class. That's a puzzle. Nonetheless, the standard practitioners still love the standard model. William Sharpe, who created the CAPM, said it would be irresponsible to assume that is not true. And this is in the context of an interview where he admits that it's empirically worthless. Eugene Fama says the CAPM is a theoretical tour de force, though empirically vacuous. John Campbell, a professor at Harvard, says the new approach, the stochastic discount factors, are so general they place almost no restrictions on the financial data, as if that's a good thing. It explains everything, and thus nothing. My solution is that with relative utility, there's no general risk premium. That is, if people are maximizing status, not income, then all risk becomes like idiosyncratic risk, unnecessary, so unpriced. The risk premium does exist in a few trivial areas, like AAA to triple B bond spread, but it doesn't generalize. There's no alpha there, and it's really a cash premium. Also, I note that people pay for hope. So for the really risky assets, generally have lower returns, out-of-the-money options, highly volatile stocks. These are like lottery tickets, and they have the same expected returns. This book is an amalgam of theory and practice, and I go over many strategies that did have alpha in the past, because I think they reflect what alpha looks like in real time. I mean, you look at convertible bond arbitrage, that generated above average returns for over a decade. And generally, these alpha ideas are not elegant or generalizable. They're very parochial, and they take a lot of detailed knowledge. But that's what it looks like in practice in financial markets. Also, I note that risk is a very useful pretext because it's so important and yet indefinable. Alpha is the residual of a risk-adjusted return, and because we can't measure risk, it creates a lot of room for people playing games about how it's measured and managed. I go over some implications, such as avoiding the lottery ticket types investments, and also focusing on the low-risk assets, such as in beta arbitrage and minimum variance portfolios, and I document how well those do relative to the indices. Also, don't risk-adjust returns, just like in derivatives theory.